Alrighty, welcome to another edition of Magus Talk. I believe I have a different source for my mic now, so hopefully it'll sound better. And I've had to calibrate a little bit. But anyways, today Jay summons Agares. And I don't mean today now as I'm doing the recording. He had done this before. Now, the account is a little disjointed in terms of real time. So he's giving us in the beginning, once he summons Agares, the events that follow, the signs and the portents. So to reiterate, Agares is a spirit of the earth. And I don't mean underground, I mean an earth spirit of the land. So it connects the ley lines and the energies of the land, but also atmospheric energies. So it's both the air and the earth. Agares rides a crocodile, which represents a kind of water and earth dynamic, but there's a bird on his arm, which means that he acts through the mental plane as well, the atmospheric energies, the mind, and Agares also makes the spirits of the earth dance. He doesn't cause earthquakes, although some interpret it that way, and maybe you can generate. Some people claim one person who does the ritual verbatim, and I think he's a professional jeweler, at least in the account. And I don't even know where the account is and stuff anymore, but that was years ago. But Agares had a hoarse voice, and he says, "Show me an earthquake," and an earthquake happened, like at some point later on, in the week or something, where he lived. But Agares, when he makes the earth spirits dance, that means the energies of the earth are activated, and they're activated in the perception of the summoning individuals. So you basically gain a sense of the earth's energies. Now you don't see, I don't know, I don't have visuals like that, at least not in any everyday sense of the term. But you can work with the ley line energies. You can work with the earth energies, and these empower your personal meridians. So if Baal connects you to the underworld, which is another level of perception that's usually subconscious, then this level of perception, the internal web, the web of your own energy lines, your own meridians, and the immediate environment around you, can plug into the earth energies and be empowered by them. That's the mystery of the first portal. Essentially, the portal of the high priestess, the fool of the high priestess, as I mentioned before, where you are initiated, the fool, into the awareness of the sacred temple, of the space. Your own internal potential begins waking up. The subconscious becomes conscious, in other words. Now, in this sense, the earth energies empower and stimulate your own meridian system, your own energy system, and create an enhanced effect. So Agares is giving Jay certain indications of once you summon this, you start observing, and events indicate that something is different. And he describes all of this. I'm not going to get into it. It has to do with one of the properties of Agares, which is to increase not charisma per se, but because you're connected to the earth lines, it's almost like you're an authority. It's almost like people perceive you like a shaman, like, how ancient peoples perceive the shaman. It's not just a wise person who heals people, but the very presence of the shaman subconsciously affects people to know that, okay, this isn't just a person walking on the planet anymore. This is somebody who's plugged in, who's more solid than a normal individual, who's more reliable, in other words, because they are more solid, they're more grounded, they're connected to the atmosphere, they're more wise. All of these things kind of register in subliminal perception, so people react to you like you are an authority. And Jay describes how, in his personal relationship, how this impacted, for example. And then there's the effect with the animals. He's in New Mexico, so he perceives these animals. He didn't have these experiences before the connection. Yeah, random events and this and that, and there's always something, but it's always connected. You got to look at the patterns. And in this case, He observed animals of the earth, goats, and he observed birds. One landed on his leg, just like Agares' arm has a bird. And that bird is a hawk, and he perceived the hawk. Now, I'm not reading into this per se, because isolated, the incidents is, oh, cool, rare incidents, but, it happens and stuff like that. But these are all connected in such a way that they relate to the symbolism involved. It's what we call synchronicities. There's no such thing as coincidence in occultism or in esoteric work or even in mysticism. You are connected to events in a way that is connected to the mind, the same way the mind makes sense of things. I mean, you can say that, oh, these are random, everything is random, and we're just putting a pattern on it. Well, maybe, but the pattern isn't arbitrary. You can't, fake it. You can't fake having all these patterns come together. They have to be approximate at the very least. So in any case, it's a bad habit to try to constantly justify, the situation, because this isn't built on faith. This is built on experience. And if you have the experience and you let the data accumulate, so to speak, I won't say it's undeniable, because you can deny anything. You can practice denying everything that you consider normal and see that, yeah, it makes sense. Who's going to prove it? Just because other people perceive it, that's the only proof you got, that it's common perception. But other people can be fooled. You can have a whole bunch of people fooled about the same thing and perceive the same thing. The emperor didn't have clothes until one little kid said, hey, look, oh, okay, now we remember that we see that he doesn't have clothes. So it is a thing. Now, this is my third attempt at the introduction, because there was a lot of static before. So I may be neglecting a few things. But Jay is going to explain everything and about his experiences. And Agares gives you that charisma. But Agares can also take it away. He can cut people off from the earth connection so they don't look like they're reliable. Now, if they're truly, sincerely reliable, that ain't going to happen, because it's self-generated. But if it's an artificial reliance, in other words, if it's fake it till you make it type of reliance, then you're bleeding the earth energies or the energies of other people to create a false effect, an overlay, a mask. It doesn't really come through you. You're not living the truth of what these energies represent. But if you're living the truth of the energies, if it is you, if you take responsibility for them, in other words, instead of using them to deceive others, that you are some kind of authority or have some kind of clout, even if you act innocent. But if you are sincere, then it's very hard for Agares to do that. That would have to be a corrupt influence that would basically force something on you. And it's more the will of the person doing it than the actual spirit. See, there's a fine line between what the spirit actually does in its own natural dynamic and what a corrupt human will, who even may think they're holier than thou, but still a corrupt human will, or one that believes the spirits are corrupt and allows that corruption to come in and is not truly working with the spirit on a deeper level, then things go awry. So in this approach, we're addressing all of this, and Jay is basically proof. And you can see that the guy's not versed, or I'm not going to say educated, but he's not like theoretical. He's anti-theoretical. He's very much, look, I'm going to experience it. If it doesn't experience, it doesn't work. And in the past podcasts, we saw that this didn't work. It fell flat. What's going on? Well, sometimes I tell them, well, read the material I sent you. Oh, yeah, I did, but I don't see it, And that's because the experience and the theory haven't coupled yet. The priority is the experience, but you need to start from somewhere. A lot of people, however, will stick to the theory, and that's it. And sometimes you embellish the experience with more theory on top. So it's a fine line to walk. And you basically need to throw your ego out the window in the sense of not having anything to prove. You got to be, shall we say, scientific about it, but at the same time, you can't be so skeptical that you demolish the nuances. You won't perceive the nuances. And once you perceive the nuances and affirm them and give, then the nuances will increase and they will amplify. And then you don't have to reinforce it through uh, connecting the patterns will be obvious, in other words. And after years of doing this in one way or another, Jay perceives the patterns in an obvious way. He doesn't have doubt. Okay, this is an experience. I feel this. This is it. And that's very hard for a lot of people. So this system is structured in such a way to first not manipulate spirits and distort the experience because you're manipulating them, and to treat the system, the situation, the relationship in a sincere manner psychologically, but at the same time energetically, which means that you get what you pay for. It's a give and take. And so the contracts are there in order to not deviate from a certain commitment where the things are going. If you start changing your mind in the middle, no, I want to do it this, no, I want to do it the other way, then either the spirit's going to become corrupt, shall we say, pissed off, but friction will develop. Or it's going to just stop. The perception will just halt and nothing's going on, and oh, it's not real, and that's it. So there's so many things we do to sabotage ourselves when we do this kind of thing, and all these self-fulfilling prophecies because of distorted information, and the distorted information could be traditional. Just because people believed in something hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and they kept believing it and didn't change until recently doesn't make it more true. But you got to know, like I say later on, like the Kenny Rogers song says, that's the biggest thing in esoteric work. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Know every single case is its own thing. And generalizations apply. Even that's a generalization. To say that it's all its own thing and generalizations never apply, well, sometimes they do. So it's a hands-on thing. You can't just educate people theoretically, write a book, and then expect them to do stuff. Then they will be able to do stuff. They'll have an outline, but it's also going to be a trial and error process. There's also going to be, you just are cautious enough that you don't put yourself in dire peril, and a lot of people aren't. And this is a psychological type of peril. It's not your life or whatever, and maybe. But the point is that you will have psychological stress. Your stress in life will amplify if you're not mature in how you handle the situation. And that is also a matter of experience. But people's stress in life is a given anyways. Nobody has a stress-free life, and it's probably boring if they did. So I'm saying a lot more than I did in previous iterations of this introduction. Because, this is the real deal. And it's realistically the real deal. It's not some, I want a demon to manifest with bat wings and horns and hooves and all the kinds of, all the bells and whistles. It's like, well, you're being fantasist. That those are role-playing games. It's not how these things work in a realistic, grounded sense. Back in the day, maybe before technology and electropollution and toxicity has dampened our senses and a whole bunch of things, and our belief systems are not open to these things, maybe the mind would translate subtle experiences into something far more dramatic, and then you got symbolism to convey the experiences that got mixed up in this. Because you have a plague coming through, spreading through a village. They could see this anthropomorphically. Some people, yeah, there it is. It's bat wings and whatever. They're hovering over the houses. And people would be sick in that house. But the actual mechanics of perception weren't known and nobody cared. But now we do. Now it's a little different. And because we're so dumbed down psychically, so to speak, in order to fire these things up, even with the help of catalytic influences like these jinn, and the angels that are combined with them, because it's not just the jinn. Jay doesn't talk about the angel influence, because it's more or less passive. It's there as a complementary thing. But it ensures that the jinn doesn't get corrupt. It ensures that it doesn't get infected by malignancy that human beings carry all the time. And that's present in nature as well. Nature isn't innocent. But at this point in time, I believe that humans carry the majority of the malignancy in this world. Doesn't mean, and if we eliminate humans, it's just going to go back to nature again. So humans are sentient, however, in a way that most other beings on this planet are not, whether they're energetic or biological or whatever, spiritual. And they have the capability of dealing with their internal corruption, their internal distortion, their internal lack of health, so to speak, mental health, in ways other beings do not. So it's a thing. All right, let's move on here. This has been, like I said, a pretty long introduction. And take it away, Jay, for lack of a better word.
Alrighty then. Okay. Hello, Ari. Hello, Tara. Hello, everyone else out there in internet land. I am in New Mexico in some canyon that is really awesome. It's really awesome. Has a lot of traffic though, and a lot of people just want to talk to me. They're like gravitating toward me, and don't know how comfortable I am with that. I'm like, leave me alone. But anyway, they're cool enough though. Okay, so with Agares and what's happening, I have successfully summoned Agares. Okay, here comes the wind. I apologize, everybody, but hey, I'm outside. He came in, riding on his crocodile. I felt a very cool vibe from him. He, taught me how to do the same thing Ball does, and I know Ari has already said it before, but someone can say something and you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then, but when you feel it, you're like, whoa, dude. With Ball, he, teaches that kind of web into the spirit world or land of the dead or whatever we want to call it. And I felt that, and it felt very, very cool. And so I felt the exact same thing from Agares, not in this particular place, but it was somewhere else. Although also here too, yeah. In fact, I can really relate to that web that goes into the planet, but not just, but also the sky too, but not like Ball. It's different, but very cool. And, I know he takes away some abilities from people, like status, I think, yeah. But I mean, I'm really around nobody right now that would be vampiring me. So that didn't happen. But I have experienced with Agares before, summoning him in a totally different context of him giving me some status. This was years ago, and my girlfriend was like, whoa, you, well, I'm gonna go ahead and censor what she said, but it's like you're like a new man or something. There's something different about you, and it's like really sexy. And we had some really good sex that night, and anyway, it was a good time. Really enjoyed it. So I'm not experiencing anything like that out here because I just haven't. But there are a lot of people that are just for some reason coming over. Maybe that has something to do with something. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I felt that web vibe that went into the planet, and I felt that north of here. And then some really cool things happened with nature. A bird actually landed on my foot while I was like laying in the back of my truck, and it looked like he had messed up hair, the pillow head, basically. You know how you wake up in the morning and your hair's all messed up? Well, that's what he looked like. And when he looked at me, it was like, oh, God, no. And he flew off. And I was like startled, too. But anyway, I looked that up. And if a bird lands on you in a dream, although this happened in reality, but if it happens to you in a dream, that's a good sign. These are good things that are happening. And I had a couple of other, I saw this family of goats. Although I didn't even look that up, I should have. And also, at the same time, this hawk in the sky, a red-tailed hawk flying into this cave in the canyon wall where, her nest was.
Okay, I want to comment a little bit on the next segment because Jay mentions runes and there are a few inaccuracies. And he's also going to tell us about a dream he had. And in the beginning, he says, well, Baal hadn't gained his form yet or something like that. But I think he probably means Agares. So even before Agares manifested, there was a little bit of turmoil. And so he has dreams of, first of all, the Native American, Mexican type deal where the ancestral energies are triggered. Now, what are these? How dare you offend the ancestors and stuff like that? No, that's not quite what it is, because he's going to explain it. And for the first time, Jay's going to reveal the identity of this vampire he keeps talking about, mixing the genders, from male to female and all of that. So that makes it a little easier. And I doubt that this person's going to be looking at the thing, but it's a deep zone. And when you are subject to that kind of thing, shall we call it a curse, for example, and in his case, it's a family curse on him, then when it's almost like considered a karmic situation or a situation where who Jay is and what Jay can do, it rocks the apple cart. It upsets the apple cart. It rocks the boat in some way. So these spirits have a kind of status quo. And they're not, I'm talking about the geographic ones. It's not all benevolent, but you got to negotiate sometimes. You got to treat it like, there's a little bit of ego involved. Because if somebody's a shaman, and whatever situation they have in their life, and they pass on and stuff, they leave something behind, and then that connects with the next shaman and the next shaman. And if it's a singular culture, as the culture evolves, you got good elements and bad elements coming in. And it's almost like when Jay is drained, not all of his energy goes to like some single person who benefits. It's distributed. It's almost like he is a sacrificial lamb. And there's a karmic reason for that. Maybe he's agreed to it at some point. And we are talking probable past lives and stuff like that. Whatever it is, his signature, his soul signature, his genetic signature, his signature of geographic interface. Because he does have shamanic talents. And these talents register. And so he's plugged into. And he's supposed to give his life according to these other parasitic zones that have kind of, it's a manipulation, it's a con job. He doesn't have to do this. And he realizes that. So he wants to be free of it. So it's like, well, I'm going to connect with the land myself. The land is okay with me. Nature is okay with me. You all vampiric beings, whoever you are, the apple cart is going to be upset because this is intolerable. You're sustaining, these spirits are sustaining undesirable situations. Even if you speak in indigenous terms, the shamans would say, you would tell some shaman, okay, you're this is happening and it needs to be corrected. And then other things can come into harmony. So in this case, there is a connection, and Jay uses the runes. And of course you can. There's no such thing as cultural appropriation where true esoteric practice is concerned. Every shaman is not like, this is my tradition and nothing. They'll borrow stuff, they'll adapt, they'll use pieces of wisdom if they recognize them. Everything evolves. And these pieces of wisdom can come from other cultures, they can come from trade, they can come from interactions with other people, especially in the modern world. So that kind of thing is just another BS realm. So in this case, Jay does some kind of runic divination, and he says there, I need to correct some things. First of all, the rune, the vertical rune, or the line, he says, is a vertical line, and it's the ice rune, the rune of contraction. So yes, that means it's not like he's bound, but it means that he's inhibited, he's contracted, he's stopped, he's halted. There's a force trying to halt him. And these dreams of fighting are like dreams of trying, like he perceived, trying to stop him from doing what he's doing. You're going to run into things like that. If you do this kind of work, or a lot of other kinds of works, not just this, but you can run into things like that. And much of the time, in my experience on forums and other discussion groups, I feel that a lot of people, not everybody, but mostly newbies but even traditionalists, sometimes they misinterpret things. They go for the easy explanation, which does not really cover the situation. You really need to get into something and connect the dots to form a little bit of a bigger picture and not run around in circles. So he's doing the ice rune, and what the runes usually do is you do a divination. It so-called predicts the future, but the future isn't a future. It's really where things are going. It's a probability. So you want to say, okay, I don't like that probability. So what is the alternative? And like Jay's going to say, you don't just pick anything. You have to choose an alternative, like steering a car. You're not going to steer a car going at top speed, 90 degrees, and do a U-turn. You'll topple over. You need to turn the car in a way and slow down and just modulate the situation, shift gears, so that the car does not crash or in some way get damaged. You need to be able to do a really a realistic turn. So he picks another card, but he doesn't do this consciously. He I don't even know. Maybe he chose it himself. But I think he picked it, according to feeling, because he has the rune stones, and then he puts his hand over it, or whatever, like is warm or tingles or something like that. Oh, that's the one. And that one was a rune that looks like a vertical arrow, and it's not Odin's spear; it's the rune of the god Tyr. Tyr, and this is a kind of god of justice, a warrior god. Now, normally this rune is supposed to say, yeah, you're going to be victorious, but you're going to have to sacrifice something. That's not quite the way it works. And people cite the myth of the god basically putting his hand into the mouth of Fenris the wolf in order to distract him, because he was bound, and in order to bind him, they were holding him down. Fenris was like, I'm going to resist unless you put your, I need a guarantee that you're not going to, trap me. But of course they were going to trap him. They lied to him. So he put his hand in there, and Fenris bit it off when he knew he was betrayed. But of course he was an evil wolf, a wolf monster, so, whatever. It was justified. But the thing is, Tyr is a god of order and justice. And you don't just, lie and betray and break your word. He kind of gave his word that it was going to be okay. So he says, well, take my arm, take my hand. And that's what this rune is going to do. If you have an underhanded victory just for convenience or whatever, you got to be careful how you fight. And in this sense, the god, the rune basically is not going to force you to sacrifice it. If you're righteous, if you're upright, if justice is with you, and you're very careful how you structure the situation, it's fine. But if you're going to cut corners, then you might have to pay a price. So that's the thing. He says, yeah, you can be unbound, but you got to be really careful how you're dealing with things, because your situation here is a little more complicated than you think. It's not just a bunch of resistance coming at you from some ancestral spirits or whatever, tied to some vampire. These spirits have a point to mistrust you on the one hand. They represent souls of former shamans or people, or a collective mind, whatever you might think, that's screwed over somewhat. In many ways, actually. But at the same time, there's underhanded stuff going on. And maybe it's not from the spirits themselves, but, an influence. There's corruption. There's a lot of things going on. So there isn't a clear-cut right and wrong here. So you need to be careful how you navigate the situation. Then you can untie the knot. Then you can unbind yourself from this karmic situation, because it's a binding that affects the human subconscious and forces us, whether we know it or not, we are blindly moving into events that it's almost like the forces of fate, and you can't fight fate and all of that, and whether you like it or not. So maybe you can't fight it aggressively and directly. Sometimes you can, but usually it's like a very complicated knot you have to unravel, and to understand it, and to know right the wrong, so to speak, and forgive yourself where you need forgiveness, correct yourself where you need correction, and deal with shit that is basically screwing you, where there is no negotiation. Sometimes you have those situations. So I like to say in these cases to evoke the Kenny Rogers song, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You got to know every situation. It isn't some one-size-fits-all thing. It's a little bit nuanced and sophisticated, and that's why wisdom, as opposed to knowledge, requires a balance between the theoretical and pragmatic. I know Jay thinks the tarot cards are a little too much, too much intellectualization, and I agree with him to a point. On the other hand, it forces you, it's a compaction of archetypes, archetypal encoding. And this kind of thing covers a lot of territory. So you exercise the mind to be able to work with these archetypes, which are complex. And at the same time, the mind can simplify them. So if you're just basing it on the bare bones stuff, then you connect with natural forces and the earth and the shamanic method, which is a little simpler, but even that has complex, deep mysteries. The runes are just as complex as the tarot cards. The Norse tradition is just, in any shamanic tradition, there are mysteries, but you don't really just convey these to normies, so to speak, or to people who aren't, quote unquote, initiated, because they wouldn't know how to make sense of them. So that's why in this methodology, you gain experience and you get to see how the theory works. And then it affects you, and you get to see how that feedback will open you up, cultivate you, change you in a positive manner. But the change doesn't happen like you take a pill and it fixes you. You are making the change. You are becoming the change that you want to see within yourself and in a way that's continuous with the world. So let's move on and let Jay just tell us about these things and how he addresses the runes and so on and so forth. And then we'll have a final segment. Okay, Jay. Sorry to interrupt.
This coupled with some rune divination, everything was going good. Ball did not turn into human yet. Then I had a dream of this kind of a Mexican guy, but also Native American. But then again, Mexicans are nothing more than, the bloodline is from Europe, but you've got that mixed in with the Aztecs. So, whatever, It was just a kind of a Native American vibe, but he wasn't speaking English. He wasn't speaking any audible language. But he was intent on fighting me. And it's one of those dreams where I used to have them with old men, where old men would be attacking me, and I would be armed with a ball-peen hammer, and I'd just be smashing them over the head, and there was just no stopping these people. They weren't excessively strong. They just could not be stopped. And so I was choosing this dream along with some other troublesome dreams. I was choosing some runes just to let me know what was going on. And I chose some prosperous ones in the beginning, and I'm like, okay, good, cool. And then, I'm blindly choosing them, like closing my eyes and just feeling them and then pulling them out of a wooden bowl that I have, and then look up the meaning. And which this is something I really don't know why. I don't know much about mythology and the Vikings or anything like that, but the runes just have this really primal, shamanic roll around in the dirt kind of vibe that I just relate to. I'm also pretty good with tarot cards, but there's just, I mean, I don't dislike tarot cards. I just like runes a lot more. I just relate to them. I think maybe because of all the symbolism, the history, the intricacies behind all the cards and everything, it's like maybe a little too much for me. I don't know. Or maybe, but again, I don't dislike them. I can use those too, but runes just, I don't know, cut through all the BS pretty much for me. Not BS in a bad way, but okay, right, whatever. Let's just move forward. So I chose some pretty prosperous runes, but then one day around those uncomfortable dreams, around that time that was happening, I chose that rune with it was a straight line. So I looked that up, and it was the first thing that popped up was it's a binding rune, and like a rune to keep people from doing something or whatever. And it's like, oh God, here we go. So that slowed down Agares quite a bit, and I bet that vibe, yeah, sure, it came from the Native Americans, or the Native American spirits or whatever, who are just resistant to everything, maybe the Aztecs. Yeah, they're going to be resistant, but I think the main thing was, this is, we've talked about this before, the whole vampire situation with Danielle and such. Well, okay, let's just throw that aside. Forget that story. Here's the real story. The vampire is my brother, and it's a thing into my family, and it's worse now than ever. But as they say in Chinese medicine, things have to get bad before they get better. And in this situation, I think this is that old saying works. Because like you said, Ari, this system is an upgrade, and it is going to attract asshole vampire energy. And so it's a thing, and I felt that family curse, quote unquote, in the dream. And it's just like them to like, no, don't do that, and then just try and get in the way. It's exactly what they would do. So there was that. So because of Ari's advice with the runes, because I don't know much about them, I just like them a whole lot. You can choose. You can tell the past, present, and future, and then choose a new rune if you don't like the future. But it's got to fit in the flow of events. You can't just pick something, the best outcome possible and go, it's going to be that one, and you have to do it with a little finesse. So anyway, it's still a rune that has to do with binding. My dream was about a fight, so I just, what's the most, what rune can I choose to be victorious in the important battle we have forthcoming in the future? So anyway, it's the Odin's spear, although I think that the history is a little different behind the rune, but it's the arrow pointing up. And so what I do if I have the future rune, I like to wear around my neck in a little bag, because I like to hang shit around my neck. It just makes me feel kind of cool. And so that was what I wore. And then I'm summoning the aces at least once a day, twice a day, especially when I'm traveling, which is streamline that. I've gotten more efficient and faster, and it's definitely working. I can definitely feel it, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when I get back and start playing music. And it'll be interesting to see how my brother reacts.
I'd like to interject here a little bit because anybody who knows about runes, or even if you don't know, this kind of sounds a little inconsistent with what he says because he's not that well versed theoretically, although his experience is very good and he's well grounded in whatever he does. But for example, he goes on about he does a divination and then he extends it into, okay, how do I read this? What do I do further? And he has the Ass rune come out. Now, this is the Aus rune, which is essentially the rune of Odin. Aus means God in Old Norse. So you can use the damn Germanic word, which is Ansuz. So you don't have to say the Ass rune. Then there's the Horse rune, of course, and there is a confusion between the Tyr rune, which is an arrow, seems like an arrow pointing upward, and Odin's spear. And this is not Odin's spear, this is the god Tyr, who's the god of justice, and this represents, it's a phallic sign that represents the kind of world pillar, and justice and order and uprightness. So it's kind of a masculine dynamic, and it will give you victory if you are upright, if you are not underhanded, if you are not promoting chaos, as it were. So it is pro-social order, but not in the conventional sense. It's the real deal. You might have convention and the status quo being completely corrupt or being completely chaotic, even though it's presented as if it's, no, this is normality. It can be dysfunctional. So this is about a healthy attitude of ordered Congress, of an ordered approach to things, in the sense that, well, this will give you victory. It will give you courage because you fight for right in the real sense. And this is what comes up because he is in the right in this case. Now, furthermore, in the next account, you're going to have a kind of allusion to the god Odin. And does Odin have a hat? Yes, sometimes he does. He conceals his face with it. He also has one eye, which over here you don't. So the jinn kind of absorbs the archetype of Odin in this sense. I don't think it's the other way around, because Jay isn't a worshiper of Odin or anything like that, but the powers and the archetypes of the runes are incorporated into the earth force of the spirit here, of the jinn. So other jinns can take on other forms or whatever, depending. Jay's indication that a jinn has become familiarized or has become one of his familiars is that it kind of looks like Clint Eastwood in the movie A Fistful of Dollars, with a poncho and a hat or a cowl or something like that. In this case, the steed of Odin, Sleipnir, has 8 legs, and it is essentially the world tree itself. It's the energy of the world tree. It's the life force of the world tree. Horses represent horsepower, life force. Even the wind in ancient Greece were represented by horses. So Odin, in this case, represents a certain intelligence behind the runes, and Agares is coupled with that intelligence. It's working with it. It's resonating with it. Again, you don't have, the real Odin would have had one eye. So the world tree, Yggdrasil, that just means Odin's horse. Ig is a name of Odin. It means the terrible. So the horse of the terrible, it almost indicates that, yeah, it's awesome to move through the life force of the 9 worlds of this tree, of this world pillar, living world pillar, that the goddesses of fate, the Norns, feed, and they essentially write the future into its bark and its leaves and everything through the use of runes. Runes are the pathways of becoming. They're also the pathways of memory. They are the pathways of what is becoming, what should become, and what has become, which are the representations of the 3 Norns. we're not going to get into Norse dynamics, but since Jay is doing it, I just wanted to clarify a little bit. But that being the case, he still comes out with a decent explanation here. And especially with these dreams and trying to communicate that, yeah, listen to the runes, what they're showing you. They're showing you the way. And for whatever it's worth, Agares can extend and remove the authority of both the vampires and the ancestral spirits that are beholden to them. Because where are the real ones? Where are the genuine ones? Where is justice in this case? So this is the J. J, take these runes at heart. And the horse rune is also a rune of connection with your own energy body, with your own vehicle, as an inspired dynamic, and that you are inspired in this case, and that Agares is working with you, and that you're actually opening the portal whether you know it or not, just by your interaction. This is an intelligent system. In other words, the spirits know what they're doing. You have to work with them, but you don't have to, if you're not sure of what's going on, something is going on to move you to the point that you will be sure. It's a very living dynamic. It's not just a mechanical process that you do. So anyways, if I miss something, I'll compliment it after Jay's next account. So take it away once again, Jay, and let's see what you got to tell us.
Okay, so, but Agares was still riding on the crocodile, okay? And this has been kind of a process because I'm not trying to make him do anything. I'm just, and Ari, I think you suggested that. I'm just kind of observing, waiting until it's time to move forward. And then I had a vision yesterday. I stayed in the back of my truck most of the time yesterday. It was cold, windy, and I was sleepy, and so I just kind of popped in and out of vision mode the entire day. And so I got a vision of an old guy with a beard, and it was a pretty clear vision, but he had a hat on. And the hat was kind of... Okay, let me fumble through and look some stuff up that I wrote down. The hat... Yeah, okay. So anyway, let me jump to the runes real quick before I get back to the old guy with the beard and the hat. I chose some runes later on after I chose Odin's spear to be triumphant in the battle or whatever. So I, there was some time that passed, and through a couple of dreams, I knew that it was time to, let's go ahead and see exactly what's happening. Did something change? And I chose the ass rune. I think it's like air, so Erse rune or something like that, but it's ASS, and that was for the past. And then the rune that looks like an M, the horse rune, and we'll stop at those two. And I read what they read. I forgot what they read, but I liked it was accurate. Okay, and so all right, here we go. That was accurate. But when I was looking up the horse rune, I know that Odin rides a horse to hell and back, and I was looking up that rune, and I looked at a picture, and there was a guy riding a horse with a cape and a hat. Did Odin wear a hat? Did Vikings wear hats? Okay, Ari, I don't know. Did I have a vision of Odin? Because it kind of felt like a Viking vibe or whatever. And I'm like going, But, in the broad scheme of things, this is not important because it could have been Agares, or it could have been something else, or it could have been a mix of some kind of Viking vibe with Agares. I'm not really sure. But it wasn't enough And it's like, okay, look, I'm just going to chill. And then, Agares, you can just communicate whatever message you want to, and just take your time, amigo. I am cool in the school. Sorry, it's an old saying I used to use. Anyway, and I did. In that afternoon, I definitely had some old guy, and he had the beard. I can't remember if he was wearing a hat or not, but I think he was probably wearing a cape. And I'm going, well, okay, how do I know if this is Agares and if he's human? What am I looking at? And so he had a little bird on his arm. And then the bird turned into one of my familiars, which is like a little Grim Reaper, basically. And I was like, okay, bang. I know who he is. I know what's happening. And so I have successfully... Here's something that's kind of important, Ari, but if it's not important, just go ahead and edit it out.
What you described that's important is essentially a question, and I'll ask the question. I'll phrase the question myself just to summarize it. He was wondering if he should summon Baal again with Agares, and he thinks that that's redundant. He believes it's redundant. He already summoned them, so you do the second one. How are you going to combine them? Well, I kind of said something before about that, but I also wrote to him extensively. And the thing is, it's hard to describe specifically. You got to get a feel for it. Basically, what you do is you summon the day jinn, Baal. Once you got that experience, set it aside. Okay, it's still there. Even if you banish the spirit, the effect of the spirit is still there, the impact or the imprint of it. Then you summon the second one, the night jinn, which in this case is Agares. And you have again the experiences, and you bring it into a kind of, you meditate on the form until you can bring it into human form and resonate with it, so to speak. That's fine, and you set it aside. Now, summoning in this case shouldn't be a big deal. You basically, what you need to do is experience the presence of both of these simultaneously. But this simultaneous thing begins with day jinn. So yeah, it's not redundant to summon Baal again because you're not going through a big-ass summoning process. You're essentially remembering Baal's presence, and you are summoning, but it doesn't have to be a big ritual. And you're doing it in the context of your Solomon's Ring, of the four directions, of the aces, of the archangels, all of that. Yes, you include that. And it's you clear the slate and you begin with that. And then you don't banish it. You don't stop the situation. You go to Agares. And you have both of them. And they are two pillars of the same portal, so to speak. So you sustain both of them. You can sustain them as an image of one and the other, next to the other, or however you wish. This will come to you. Now, their energies are they're both there anyways. They are. But how do you affirm to yourself that you're opening the portal? Well, that's going to be revealed to you so long as you're conscious that that's what you intend to do, that's what you intend that's happening. And Agares is already informing you that, okay, this is you're moving into this now, and Agares wouldn't be able to appear without Baal's influence anyways, in the form that he is. And so, if you want to, well, you need to organize this thing more coherently. You need to ground the experience of both of these guys together. So then all you'll need to do, because they also have their angels with them, so all you need to do is, if you have the seals of both of them, and they become familiars. Are they familiars? Is Baal right now to the point of being your familiar, or extending an essence to you that is a familiar? If yes, then bring up the familiar. A familiar doesn't have a lengthy summoning process. It's basically tune in and there it is. And the angel is there also. Angels don't give familiars, but they're very easy to access. Just tune into the name and it's there. And it's also correlated with the jinn spirit, or whatever the spirit is. Again, I call them jinn. Agares at the same time. Is Agares your familiar now? So it seems so from the description. whatever's going down. He says bang. There's the little communicator, the little bird on Agares' forearm turned into the form of the generic jinn familiar indicator, the Grim Reaper type, because this was Furcas. Furcas is a kind of iteration of Hades, the god Hades, or the Lord of the Underworld. Lord of the Underworld in the sense that it represents the generic underworld template that correlates with these jinn or these spirits. So by the time you do bring up both of them, as one is the power that enhances, because the point is you're establishing the web that connects you to the underworld. That is the day jinn. And this web is being powered by the forces of the earth web, and that is the night jinn. So if these are now familiars, the portal is your personal thing. You open the portal. You don't need the major jinn to open the portal. You don't need the major jinn to do anything. The familiars are what you work with, actually. And they are the jinn themselves. They are the spirits, but a personalized version. Whenever you summon, you actually do, you do generate a familiar. A familiar is bestowed. And in some of these cases, yes, it gives familiars. Yeah, that's when the summoners have been aware of the situation, then they noted it down. Sometimes they're not aware. But once you personalize a jinn and form a kind of relationship with it, then what you work with is a familiar, because it's tuned to you. Nobody can take your familiar away from you unless they do so in some occult manner, or you become victimized, but you're moving through the system, so you're not. It can be removed. In fact, there is the jinn gap that does remove familiars from people and blocks the jinn process, basically blocks any kind of and why would we use that? Well, in order to stop corrupt spiritual activity. If somebody is summoning spirits that are corrupt, a corrupt version, and then they set them against you, you need to deal with that in a way that, and it's not just to protect yourself, it's also to help the spirit not be infected, because then it affects even if they don't take away your so-called spirit or whatever, yours can become corrupted. Your experience can become corrupted. And it's like a negative infection. So there is that kind of precedence. So in this case, Jay, however you do it, bring up both of your familiars and know that Agares, the power of Agares, is the earth force. See, that's the thing in this zone. You need to understand each jinn in terms of its day and night properties. You need to understand what the night jinn, what is the power that they bestow the day jinn. Regardless of what the jinn is, I mean, here you have a case that's rather simple because they're both about the web and they're both compatible, even though it may not seem so on the surface, but other jinn are wider apart, so to speak, in how they function and what they are, or seemingly so. But there is a point of contact where the power of one jinn reinforces the process of the other, the main theme. And these jinn come in pairs because a portal has two jinn. That's how this system works. The normal so-called summoning system, Solomonic magic in general, just does one spirit at a time. But here, this is a kind of path-working system, a cultivational path-working system. And once you have awakened the familiars, then they are a stable presence. And so eventually you're meant to awaken the familiars of the decan that's 180 degrees from the first decan, and then the other two that are 90 degrees. So you have 8 jinn, or 4 pairs, that can be sustained in awareness simultaneously and working on you simultaneously. And they have enough common elements that they form a cross of balance. Once you're able to coherently sustain that cross of balance and see where it takes you, then you can move on to the next cross. And there are 18 jinn per quarter. 4 times 18 is 72, which means there are 9 pairs. So there are 9 crosses. And you work through one at a time. And each cross, each 8 jinn complex, is a level or degree of attainment. So they progress. It's a spiral progression. And it's not like one level is simpler, lower, or whatever. They're all powerful, but they're just different aspects of being. The twos, for example, the aces and what all the entities they're associated with correlate with your mental energy. They're more a consciousness type thing. There's no strong, grounded life force associated with them because your consciousness is aligning with everything, but it's still felt. And then the twos, this cross, is the life force, the breath force, the chi, the prana, however you want to call it. It's a little denser, but it's still more flexible, and it's oriented with the mind. The next one is even denser. It's your watery element. It directly ties to the deeper earth currents. Here you still have the breath currents. And again, Jay does a rune reading, and the rune of Odin does pop up, which is, again, connected to the air element, the life force, and the mental vitality. All of these things are coming together. So it is an art. But no, yes and no, to answer the question. You don't need to re-summon Baal as you did the first time. The summoning process per se is done to anchor the jinn into your experience, and that is done by being given or manifesting a familiar of the jinn. A familiar is a lesser form of the original, but first, it's adequate for our purposes, and second, lesser form doesn't mean, we don't need the greater jinn. I've summoned this spirit and it's all mine, No, there's 50 million people can summon the same spirit at the same time. It doesn't mean the spirit splits up. It means it's non-quantifiable in that sense. So the power of the familiar depends on your integrity, your connection, your activation, and your willingness to grow, because the power increases. It doesn't take your energy. It connects you to the environment so you can circulate through a wider field. You don't need to be vampiric. You don't need to bleed anything else. Energy, this kind of life force is free. It's in the breath. It's in your metabolism. It's in the sun and the stars and everything around you. It's just that we're usually closed off to it. And in that sense, the familiar is nourished. And through the familiar, the jinn hub, the essential intelligence, is also nourished. And that will come back to you in a benign manner. This is an ecosystemic dynamic. This isn't some evil, demonic, whatever, you're demonizing nature if you demonize the spirits, but you understand that nature can be harsh and nature can be corrupt and toxified and infected and hostile. And it's not often justifiable in human terms or in any terms or in ethical terms. We don't need to just accept it. You don't just walk out into the jungle and let yourself be eaten because something wants to survive. You're in it for your own survival as well. But humans are sentient and they're creative, and they can design circumstances that can repurpose nature into something more healthy, more evolved. Humans are evolutionary catalysts. These spirits are also evolutionary catalysts for humans. And it's a symbiosis. It's not a parasitic relationship. I emphasize this because of all the misunderstandings involved, and how the process itself will emphasize it and will give you positive reinforcement when the emphasis is positive, and negative reinforcement when you're going against it, because it's a major thing. So let's wrap it up. Okay, Jay, that more or less answers your question. I hope the listeners don't get confused, because this is an art form, and we are doing this in so-called real time. The recordings aren't real time, but the actual understanding, the teaching, the give and take, this is a cultivation dynamic in progress. And it's almost like a beta testing, but it's not like a blind beta test. This is a well-established thing that I've done to a certain degree, enough to know, but the way I do it is dependent on my own experience of many of 4 decades of esoteric work. So you can't just transfer that or even explain it. It's a different approach. There are many nuances that I don't even want to translate, But Jay is coming from a different place. And we're translating this on terms that he can handle and he can ground, and if he can do it, most anybody can. And that's not disparaging Dr. J here. He's the doctor. He's very talented in this thing, and he knows what he's doing, and other people wouldn't be able to do it. And as he accomplishes it, it's grounded. This time, it's because he's basing on his experience with previous relations with a jinn. So he has something to fall back on. Somebody coming straight off the boat, so to speak, may have problems. But once he works this through, it will be available to everybody else. I don't know how I would make it available or if I even should, but I am seriously thinking about it. But it will be a healthy alternative to other esoteric methods. And sometimes I agree with the Christians, the fundamentalists even. There are some points where they're correct where occult matters are concerned. Most of the time, I think they have misrepresented things. Because that's not my experience. And Jay's not getting possessed or whatever. He's having more problems with his family situation than he is with any kind of spirits involved. And we're not playing by the rules of convention here. However, the tier rune of order, of justice, of integrity, that applies. Okay, let's take it further. Okay, so what are your concluding remarks, Jay?
How y'all doing? Doing great. So there's either a lot of traffic or I'm just a people attractor today. I don't know. So anyway, and that could have something to do with the Agares. But anyway, so I summoned them both with their angels and with the aces, with the 2 of swords. I did want to say this, Ari, that when I am summoning, this is the order I do it in, and I'm tweaking it a little bit, but I think you'll be happy with it. When I'm facing south, okay, I summon the angels and with the suit emblems, and everything is done with the sense organ, the tip of the tongue, the nose, the ears, the eyes, the mouth, and then I turn east, and then I go ahead and rev up my pillar energy, my heart energy. I go ahead and rev that up. Okay, I leave everything else alone, but I go ahead and rev up that heart energy just to stand alone with the emblems and the angels. And then I call in the rulers. Then the rulers, burn their sigils into the emblems, and then I rev everything up according to the 2 of swords with the organ energy, and then, then I just call in the genie if I take it far enough to summon a genie. So there you go. And so anyway, the Agares came in with the final future rune that I chose blindly, which was the rune of need, or Naz. That's a letter I don't even know. But it looks like a cross, but that center line that would make a normal cross is angled. The left side is higher than the right side. And so I read up on that rune, and so what I like to do is carry the rune that I want my future to be, again, in that little bag around my neck. So that is what I have. I know I'm jumping around with runes and such, but I mean, geez, I just kind of took to it so so naturally that it's kind of hard to separate it from anything now. It's like, there we go. Really, really cool how that happened. I've always liked runes, just never could get into them until now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Dr. J out.
No worries, man. You're doing pretty well. And that's good that you can use the runes. It's always helpful to have a divinatory adjunct, to have some kind of method. I mean, yeah, tarot cards, but runes have their own special place, and I think they suit you much better. I don't use them for divination. I use them for manifestation, but for me, each rune has its own particular energy signature, and it's almost like a spirit in itself. But it's a mystery. It goes beyond just an identity. So I summon them in a sense, or focus or meditate on them, whatever. But the energy is distinct, and I can circulate it, and I can move it around, and I can combine it with the energy of another rune. And when you put runes together, you create a bind rune. And this establishes a synthesis of energies, like a chord, a musical chord. And this can affect reality. But they're specific about it. It doesn't blast people like rays or plasma balls or whatever, plasma cannon refuse. And it essentially rechannels probability. It affects outcomes and the course of the way events unfold and stuff like that, and the quality of experience in life, and a whole bunch of things. So it is cool in that way, and I'm glad you're getting into it, because in this system specifically, too, you need a means of expressing esoterically beyond, whatever it is, something that isn't part of this system, but that is compatible with you, that you can use to do magic, but I'm not so much into rituals, but some kind of, especially with the power of the word, a sacred alphabet, a symbol system, something that's different than just using the jinn. But you can also use the jinn in the same way. What I wanted to say very briefly was that do not forget the angels. You've described a very thorough and decent way of summoning so far. And that's basically how we do it, folks. It's no bells and whistles. It's very simple, very scaled down, but effective. But don't forget, Jay, that there are angels coupled with the jinn. And they don't play a very big active role, but they play a supportive one. They supply a context for the jinn to work with. They supply a higher consciousness that will protect the jinn from corruption, so you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. And usually, from what I've seen, the way they align with each other, there's a compatibility here. So these are not avenging angels or policing angels or restricting angels. They more or less keep the jinn intelligence in line with the evolutionary purpose of the system, of the cultivation, of the alchemy, of this jinn angel alchemy. Okay, folks, this has been longer than other ones because there was a lot said, but I would say Jay's experience was a success. We're moving on. In the next phase, it's going to be combining the two to open a portal, and we'll see how Jay experiences that and what a portal is. And from there, it's going to be the other pairs. And it's going to get more exciting, I don't know if that's the word, but more interesting if you're interested in this kind of thing, especially if you're interested in working with this kind of thing. So thanks again for being here. Check out my Substack. Check out my Magus Wisdom Now on YouTube, where if you're interested in yoga, and I don't mean the stretchy kind, Raja Yoga, with the principles of harnessing your innate potential, meditation and all of that. My next video, which is going up very soon, is going to be about specific practice of reverse engineering consciousness through the four senses. Please check it out. Okay, thanks, Jay. Looking forward to your next input. Thanks, y'all, for being here. Magus out.